Hi, welcome to CDA 5220. Today I will talk a little bit or elaborate a little bit about threat model and trust model. So threat model is an assumption of the set of adversaries, like who they are and what they are capable of. The trust model is a set of properties that are assumed to be correct. So in combination, the trust model and the threat model defines the security of the system. Let's look at a simple example. So for example, a few decades ago, there is a product called steering wheel lock that is sold to secure a car against theft. And the way it works is that there is a steel bar that is locked into the steering wheel. And the premise of this product is to prevent the thief from driving the car towards the destination. So let's say they get into the car. When they drive it, the steering wheel has limited range of motion, making it hard for them to turn left or turn right. So this product was popular back then. And if you think about it, what was the threat model that was assumed? Okay, so this is what they assume. So someone who walk, without bringing sophisticated tools, just walk around and look at a car and say, I like this car, I have 5 minutes, right? So the person tries to get into the car and do something. Now, this threat model is what is assumed for this product. But it turns out is that if the threat model is wrong, okay, so let's say if instead the attacker has a power drill, that attacker can just come into the car and just drill a hole where the key is and then remove the steering wheel lock. So in this case, getting the threat model correct is important for the security of the car. If the assumption is not correct, then the protection may not be as strong as imagined. Okay. Now, in the context of secure execution environment, we can see that there was like assumption prior to cloud computing and there's assumption after cloud computing, right? So before cloud computing, on the diagram on the left, in general, and it's not always the case, but I'm making generalization. So in general, people trust the system software, the architecture and hardware, and they don't trust the applications that they run. So for example, they may run an antivirus software running in the operating system space to monitor the application, etc. But in general, they trust the operating system and hardware and architecture. Okay. Now, this trust is misplaced because even back then, operating system could be compromised. However, as operating system became more and more complex and bigger, so for example, Windows XP has 50 million lines of code, plus a bunch of device drivers, etc., that are contributed by other parties. It was clear that it was a matter of time before people start questioning the trust model. Now, the advent of the cloud computing actually helped accelerate this because all of a sudden, users, they only control their application software. They're going to run their application software in the cloud, where the cloud computing providers are the ones that provide the hardware, the architecture, and all the system software, including operating system, hypervisor, device drivers, etc. So because the users perceive that they no longer have the control of the system software, then they start to lose trust in the system software and they demand something stronger. And secure execution environment is an attempt to basically say, hey, we don't have to trust the system software. We can trust just the architecture, and this is based on the assumption that the adversary will be able to compromise the system software but not the architecture. Okay, so you can see that the trust model, the trust base has shrunk to include just the hardware, the architecture, and a small portion of the application called enclave, but it no longer assume the system software to be trusted. Now, some of you may ask, well, is that sufficient if architecture, can it really be trusted? Now, this is where things, where we draw the line. For secure execution environment, we will assume that the architecture can be trusted. However, as with everything, our assumptions could be wrong, meaning that there's some research and there's some community that looks into what if the architecture itself, the chip itself, cannot be trusted. And they have good reason for asking the questions. In the past, when in the semiconductor industry, a single organization will basically design the chip and manufacture this chip in a fab. Fab is a chip factory, all within the same organization. However, today, this chip design process has changed. There are many fabless chip makers. Actually, most of the chip makers are fabless. They don't have the fab in their company. And there is a separate fab company that manufactures chips for them. Okay, so for example, NVIDIA, AMD, these are like fabless chip makers, and the fab company may be TSMC, Samsung, etc. Then the second thing is that instead of designing the chip from the ground up, today many chip designers assemble together a bunch of IP blocks. IP blocks is basically a design, a wrap of design that you can add to your own design to have additional capabilities. So, for example, I want to design something, but a chip, but I don't want to reinvent the wheel for video encoding and decoding. So I just obtain an IP block dealing with video encoding and decoding and just add it to my design. Okay. So with the changes in how chips are made, there are new threats. So the chip design can be reverse engineered, but at the same time, there's a question into as to if I use certain IP block, how do I know that that IP block doesn't contain a circuit that contains something malicious? Okay, something called Trojan circuit. It's actually an active research topic to figure out, is there a Trojan, or can we design something to be able to detect the Trojan? It turns out it's pretty difficult because the Trojan can be dormant, remain dormant for a long time until it is activated. Okay, so anyway, through these two examples, what the points I want to get across is that threat model, getting the threat model correct is very important, because the threat model is basically a set of assumptions of who the adversaries are and what they are capable of. If we are wrong in assuming certain capability, but in fact the adversary has additional capability, then our security protection may not be strong enough. Okay, and the second point I want to get across is that the threat model changes over time. So what threat, even if we get the threat model correct today, in a few months or a few years, things may change, and adversary may change. Their capabilities may change, and the threat model may change. And therefore, it's important to kind of revisit this threat model from time to time to see if we need to modify it. All right, so these are the two important points I want to get across. Until next time.